His courage leading missions in war zones like Iraq, Somalia, and Panama earned him a Bronze Star and Purple Heart. Yet an invitation for retired Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin to speak at a West Point prayer breakfast resulted in anything but a hero's welcome. The Council on American Islamic Relations, or CARE, joined a coalition of far-left groups in protesting Boykin's appearance due to his supposed Islamophobia. Boykin, a strong critic of radical Islamist groups like the Muslim Brotherhood, eventually withdrew from the event.
In consultation with the faculty, the staff at West Point, who clearly wanted me to withdraw to save the embarrassment of them having to cancel my invitation, I did so.
CARE, which led the charge against Boykin, has come under major scrutiny from federal authorities in recent years. In 2007, it was named an unindicted co-conspirator in the largest terrorism financing trial in American history. In 2009, a federal judge ruled that, quote, ample evidence exists linking CARE to the terror group Hamas. And in 2011 congressional testimony, FBI Director Robert Mueller said no formal relationship existed with CARE because of concerns about the group's national leadership. Nevertheless, CARE continues as a go-to source for the mainstream media and has seen success lobbying against critics of Islamic supremacy.
If they can get West Point to bend, what's next?
CARE is still very influential. And it is influential primarily because the leadership in America today, and I don't mean just at the national level, but all over, is still catering to CARE, still giving them credibility and giving them the opportunity to wield power in America.
That power was on full display recently in New York City. CARE successfully pressured the NYPD to stop showing a documentary called The Third Jihad at counterterrorism training courses. The film, which is narrated by a moderate Muslim, details the rise of Muslim Brotherhood front groups in America.
Third Jihad, by the way, criticizes CARE and exposes them, so of course they don't want the NYPD to know.
National security expert Ryan Morrow works for the Clarion Fund, which produced The Third Jihad.
The NYPD and government agencies will say, well, if we want to have cooperation with the Muslim community, we have to please CARE.
Pleasing CARE apparently includes preventing testimonies of ex-Muslims. Kamal Salim, a former Islamic terrorist who became a Christian, says his recent speech at a Michigan high school was shut down after the local CARE chapter complained.
People like us talking about their secrets and their ideology and how it's done, they tried to swiftly destroy them.
Now, General Boykin says it all comes down to the first rule of war: know your enemy as you know yourself. And he says America's leaders are failing that test, Pat.
Thanks, Eric. Eric, we've run into CARE before. It is clearly a front for extremist groups. Who is being hoodwinked by them?
Well, the U.S. government, for one, Pat. The mainstream media, as I mentioned in the story, they go to CARE constantly as their go-to source for quotes, for sound bites. No asterisk next to CARE's name, a Hamas-linked group, a Muslim Brotherhood-tied group. But the U.S. government, Pat, through the years, has dealt with CARE closely. Now, FBI Director Robert Mueller says, look, we cut ties with CARE at the national level. But, Pat, sources who have worked in the FBI tell me that CARE still meets with local FBI chapters. So what we have is a radical Islamist group which is hostile to the United States, whose leaders have supported Hamas. Another CARE leader has said he'd like to see America become an Islamic state someday. We have people like this, Pat, advising our government on its counterterrorism policies.
But let's talk about, Eric, you say advising our government. Who do they advise, and how close do they get to the higher levels of the Obama administration?
Pat, you're not going to believe this. Here's a great example for you. On February 8th, just a few weeks ago, Muslim Brotherhood-tied groups, and Pat, it's not just me saying it, Muslim Brotherhood documents identify these American Muslim groups as, quote, our organization, Friends of the Brotherhood. Two of these groups, Pat, the Islamic Society of North America and the Muslim Public Affairs Council, these are two leading American Islamist groups, met with the FBI Director Robert Mueller here in Washington, D.C. And Pat, if you can believe this, these Islamist groups reviewed documents that the FBI uses in counterterrorism training for FBI agents. And Pat, Under these Islamist groups' recommendations, the FBI did away with 1,000 documents that were used in FBI training about terrorism, Islam, jihad. So basically, Pat, what we have are Muslim Brotherhood-tied groups, basically, in many ways, controlling some of our counterterrorism strategy here in America. This is the epitome of the fox guarding the henhouse.
Are we throwing our country away? I mean, are we going to give it away? These people on the left, I mean, these Islamic groups want to undermine our freedoms. They don't want a free society like we have here. They want Sharia law. Are we giving this country away?
Oh, the left, absolutely, Pat. Full speed ahead, handing it over, not only in Europe, here in America. Here's a great statistic for you. The number of mosques in America since 9/11 has increased by 74%. In 2001, there were 1,200 mosques in America. By 2011, just a decade later, that number had nearly doubled. That's astounding. After the greatest Islamic terror attack in history on American soil, you would figure the number of mosques might decrease, but they increase by double. That is astounding, Pat. That is not a coincidence. Groups like the Muslim Brotherhood have a clear blueprint. Their documents show, as I said, and our own FBI has possession of these documents. Our government knows what's in these Muslim Brotherhood documents. Their strategy for America, they call mosques, for instance, Islamic centers, quote, the axis of their movement where battalions are supplied. Pat, it's all there in their documents. We have them in our possession.
There was a trial a few years ago, and a federal judge said to the accused, he said, you have hijacked a great religion. George Bush said Islam is a religion of peace. Where do they get off saying stuff like that?
It's a great question, Pat. Rampant political correctness. Look, no intellectually honest individual can say that Islam is a religion of peace. And I say that for three reasons. Number one, Islam's core texts, the Quran, the Hadiths, are littered with violence and calls to violence, especially against Christians and Jews. Number two, the example of Islam's Prophet Muhammad, who even Muslims will tell you was a warrior and a conqueror, not a man of peace. Number three, Pat, a cursory glance at Islam's history, both current, older. It's littered with conquest, with bloodshed, with expansionism. So no intellectually honest individual, Pat, could look at those 3 points and tell you with a straight face that Islam is a religion of peace. We are kidding ourselves, and it's not going to get better. If we're trying to appease Islamists, that only makes them want more and more, and it makes them stronger.